Hey, today's Q&A is about Arlah trees. And the question is as follows. The Isser of Arlah applies even to Chutz Aretz. Midraisa, the Isser of Arlah, which is to say is for the first 3 years that a tree is planted, we're not allowed to eat from the fruit of that tree, and that applies even to Chutz Aretz. But there are many kulas about Arlah in Chutz Aretz. Again, this is the Raisa, but there are kulas Midraisa in Chutz Aretz. And the question that the person has is, they bought a year-old cherry tree, sapling, and then they replant it in the backyard. The question is, do they have to restart the count of Arlah from when they replanted it, or does it go from when it was originally planted, meaning a year ago when the nursery planted it way back when? How do they start counting their 3 years? And the answer is, it depends on how the replanting happens. If you bought the sapling as a bare root, meaning it had no dirt on it, or you didn't buy it like that, but all the dirt fell off while you were replanting it, then the 3 years period starts again from when you replanted. But if the tree was bald or burlapped or was in a pot, then the 3 year count starts when it was first planted, not when you replanted it. Now, if you're not sure, if the nursery can't figure out exactly when the tree was first planted, then since we're in Chutz La'aretz, it's a kula in Chutz La'aretz, you can assume the earliest estimate. If they say, I'm not sure if it was this time or this time, you go with the earlier estimate of when the tree was planted, because of the sveikas. In Chutz La'aretz, you could be mekel. Now, a variation of that is, what happens if you didn't plant the sapling, but two other variations is, one is, what happens if you take a branch from one tree and you graft it onto another tree? That's called to be markiv. You graft a branch from one onto the other. It takes on the Arlah status of the host tree, which is to say is the host tree is already more than 3 years old. So then this new branch is now also considered to be already past 3 years, and you don't have to worry about Arlah. There's a different type of sort of grafting, of propagation, and that is you layer a branch into and out of the ground. So you take a branch from a tree, you stick it under the ground, and you poke it out of ground, someplace away from there. So that's called to be mavrich. So, and then it'll grow as its own tree. That branch that you sort of stuck into the ground and out of the ground. So the answer is, the status goes like this. If this shoot is still attached to the parent tree, then it keeps the post Arlah status of the parent tree. But as soon as you cut them off, when you sever the connection between the new tree and the old tree, then you have to restart the 3 years from that point. Now, I mentioned that Arlah goes for 3 years, but it doesn't go 3 years on the clock. If you plant it today, it's not 3 years from today that the Arlah ends. It's a little more complicated than that. Okay, and it really depends on what part of the year the tree was planted on, and as follows. There's two choices of how you can count Arlah, two different ways depending on when you planted it. The first, like this: if you plant a tree between Rosh Hashanah and Tu B'Av, okay, that's the bulk of the year, maybe almost the whole year, somewhere between Rosh Hashanah and Tu B'Av, then year 1 of the 3 years ends on the Rosh Hashanah that follows. Year 2 ends a year later on the next Rosh Hashanah, and year 3 ends on Tu B'Shvat of what would be the 4th year. So you wait till the next Rosh Hashanah plus a little bit until Tu B'Shvat. For example, if you planted a tree in Nisan of last year of Tafshin Pei Beis, so year 1 would end on Rosh Hashanah of Tafshin Pei Gimel. That was about 6 months later. Year 2 ends on Rosh Hashanah of Tafshin Pei Daled, and year 3 will end on Tu B'Shvat of Tafshin Pei Hey. So it's altogether that would, if you listen to the dates over here, it was about 2 years and 10 months. They planted it in Nisan of Tafshin Pei Beis, and the 3 years ended on Tu B'Shvat of Tafshin Pei Hey. So that's for what happens if a person plants it between Rosh Hashanah and Tu B'Av, the 15th day of Av. What happens if a person planted between Tu B'Av and Rosh Hashanah? It's about 6 weeks at the end of the summer. So then year 1 ends on Rosh Hashanah of a year later, meaning a little more than 12 months after the planting. Year 2 ends on Rosh Hashanah of a year after that, and year 3 ends on Rosh Hashanah on the year after that. So, for example, if a person would have planted their tree during El of Tafshin Pei Beis, last year, the end of El of Tafshin Pei Beis, year 1 ends on Rosh Hashanah of Tafshin Pei Daled, so it's a year and a couple of weeks past. Year 2 ends on Rosh Hashanah of Tafshin Pei Hey, and year 3 ends on Rosh Hashanah of Tafshin Pei Vav. Okay, so in which case the total Arlah for this tree was about 3 years and a month or so. Okay, so depending on when you plant it, depends on how long it takes, and also whether the Arlah ends on Rosh Hashanah or if it ends on Tu B'Shvat. Now, just to finish off, the Issa of Arlah applies to all parts of the fruit, meaning including the peels and the pits, but it doesn't apply to the leaves or the sap or other parts of the tree. Okay, so Arlah is for all parts of the fruit, but no parts of the tree. Also, we're not allowed to eat Arlah, but it's also asr. No, we're not allowed to have any benefit from it, and therefore you can't feed it to animals or do other types of hanafah. In the fourth year, there's a special din we have to do if it's a grapevine, but that doesn't apply to other trees.